Most guitar amps have this hidden sort of secret guitar channel. Now inside this amp is a circuit that is throwing away a surprisingly large amount of signal. In some amps up to around 20 dB. Now this isn't about bad design, it's actually there for a very good reason. It's what makes your bass, middle and treble controls work. But what happens if we stop it from doing that? Are we going to actually get more gain or a better tone, or is it just going to turn into a complete mud fest? So I've installed a simple switch inside my Fender Hot Rod Deluxe so we can find out. This mod will work on loads of guitar amps that use a passive 3-band EQ, including Fenders, Marshalls, Mesa Boogies. There's plenty of them out there. Everything is set to halfway. Have a quick listen. So that is a pretty big change for something so simple. It gives you such a creamy sort of rich tone. And honestly, it's one of the best bang for buck mods I've ever come across. So let's have a look at what's actually happening. Most guitar amps use what is called a passive tone stack. Now that's simply the bass, middle and treble controls. Now the important word there is passive. Unlike an active EQ, a passive EQ can't boost anything. The only way it can shape your sound is by throwing parts of the signal away. And that's why the Fender and Marshall style tone stacks are famous for having a lot of signal loss. And that's exactly what we're taking advantage of here. All we're doing is disconnecting this ground reference from the mid control with a switch, and that's it. One wire. When we do that, the tone stack becomes much less effective. Less signal gets thrown away, the mids come back, the amp feels louder, richer, a bit more direct. It's almost like discovering a hidden channel that was already inside the amp. This is a great way to see what's happening. I'm going to bring up my tone stack visualizer on my website, and if we scroll down, this is the frequency response of a Fender tone stack, like a typical Fender tone stack. And you've got your controls on the side here, and you can sort of play around and see what it does. Now, if we simulate this by putting in a 20 meg pot here, check that out. So as soon as we lift that ground connection, you can see the response flattens out, and we also get a lot more of that gain back. And we're not adding another gain stage or adding another tube, we're just simply allowing more of that signal to naturally flow through that amplifier. Now, it's worth mentioning that there are multiple EQ stages all throughout your amplifier, not just in that 3-band tone stack section. So while this definitely changes the character of the amp, it's not removing the entire amp's voicing, just a really influential part of that voicing. Right, so let's have a quick look inside my Hot Rod Deluxe. Now this is an incredibly simple modification, which is one of the reasons I like it so much. So if you've never modified an amp before, this could be a really good first project. Now that said, tube amplifiers contain potentially lethal voltages, even when they're switched off. So please make sure you know how to work safely inside an amplifier before having a crack at this. Now on a Hot Rod Deluxe like this, it can be a little trickier because you're probably going to have to break a PCB connection, where a lot of amps you might only have to clip a wire, which is super easy. So all I did was I put a torch under this PCB so I could see from this side where the traces were, and that little hole you see there, that is just where I drilled through the ground connection from the mid pot here. That ground connection went all the way to here, and then I just wired directly to the pot. So from that leg of the mid pot, went up to the switch, and then out from the switch to the ground connection where that pot would have originally connected. Now it is important to connect the ground to where that pot would have originally connected, not just dump it somewhere in the amp. You don't want to treat the amp's ground like a big sewer system where you can just dump grounds wherever you feel like it, because you're going to end up with problems if you do that. So one question people might be asking is, if it sounds so good, then why don't manufacturers do it this way from factory? And that's actually a pretty fair question. Now the answer is traditional tone stacks are there because obviously it gives players a lot of tonal options to play with, and it's a massive part of each amp's signature sound. So the classic Fender mid scoop is a huge part of why a lot of players love these amps. So this mod isn't about making an amp better, it just gives you another flavor, and personally I love having both options on a switch. So of course it's easy to hear the differences in isolation, but the real question is, what does it sound like in the mix? So here's a quick track using this Hot Rod Deluxe or the guitar tones with this mod turned on. So that's the basic version of this mod, but if you wanted to take it a bit further, you could add a resistor in there just to lessen the effect, or you could install a 100K audio taper pot so you have complete control over that effect. Personally, I prefer a simple switch. One flick and you've got two very different voicings inside one amplifier. It could also be easily added to a foot switch as well. Now this mod has been around for a long time, it's nothing new, but sometimes simple ideas get forgotten about because they're not fancy or overly complicated. And I think it's a really good reminder that great amp mods don't always involve adding more tubes, adding more gain stages, more complexity. Sometimes it just takes clipping a single wire. So if you've tried this mod before or you're thinking about installing it inside your amplifier, let me know down in the comments. Thanks for checking out the video and have a great week.